There are many ways that I know that I'm getting older. There's, of course, the cue of hair color. There is the cue of being offered the senior discount. There is the cue of turning on the oldies music station and realizing this music isn't old, and then realizing, yes, it is. There's been an evolution in my lifetime in what used to be classic rock that is now my music from when I was young, playing at the grocery store. Terrible. But why do they do that? Why would they play music that brings you back to your youth in places where you're in public? Why does music do that, and how? Well, music attaches to our memories. It's a kind of multi-sensory way of experiencing the world with melody and song and rhythm. Somewhat like the Passover Seder, which uses sight and smell and taste to connect you to stories and to your family. I think music also resonates because it can create an emotional connection. It can remind you of a special time when you heard that song, or a place where that song is attached, or a person to whom that song is especially meaningful in connection to you. And as we experience this evening, music can be an experience of beauty. It uplifts us, it transcends our individual life and experience. It connects us with a broader culture. It makes us feel elevated in some way, whether that's a spirit or a soul, or simply the emotional part of our brain and body. When Kol Hadash was founded, one of the most important elements of creating this congregation was our choir. In some ways, our choir is a bit like the philosophical example called the ship of Theseus. The ship of Theseus is a question in philosophy. If you have a ship, and then one of the boards gets a little old and you replace it with a new one, and then another board gets older and you replace it with a new one, and if you replace all the boards, is it still the same ship? So our choir has some members of it that have been here since the founding of the congregation, and then others who are new. And yet it is still the Kol Hadash choir. And the idea of having a choir to sing, to having lay people offer their voices in song, to having a body of music that was emotionally meaningful and resonant, that was important. And at the end of that first meeting, I understand, because I was not there, someone found a piano. And Lois Wolins, who was our longtime pianist, began to play one of the canonical songs in our canon, that is, called Peace Be With You, wishing each other peace, love, and joy. Now, in a humanistic Jewish congregation, our Shabbat services, our high holiday services are created by the community, and if there's a rabbi or a madrich, madricha, a leader, by that person. But when you're choosing how to create a service, we have many choices. Without a siddur, without a fixed prayer book, the sky is the limit. Do we want prose, or do we want poetry? Do we want English? Do we want Hebrew or Yiddish or Ladino or other Jewish languages? Do we want moments of silence? And how long should those moments be? Do we want responsive readings, or does that feel like groupthink? And not do we want music, we know we do, but how much music, and what kind of music, and which songs will speak to us on this subject at this moment? There is a humanistic Jewish philosophy of music, as we have a philosophy for just about everything. We try to balance three values: continuity, integrity, and creativity. What do we mean by continuity in music? Well, we want to feel a connection with our past, with other Jews, with Jewish tradition and history and culture. And so we want some of the melodies that we grew up with, that our parents or grandparents sang. We want some of the lyrics that resonate with our literary tradition. We want some continuity with the past. At the same time, we also value our integrity. We want to say what we believe and sing what we believe. And we want to be able to believe what we sing. So the meaning of the words matters. We don't simply say something in Hebrew and something different in English and claim they're the same thing. We don't sing something in Hebrew and in the service print a translation that is not. It's a riff, it's a creative response, it's a poem. But it may not be a translation of what we just said. And for us, words have meaning. And so if they must be changed to meet the integrity value, that's that balance, continuity with the past, but also integrity of our beliefs. And third, creativity. Who wrote these songs and these poems? It was not a god, it was not angels. If it was rabbis, they were people. And if we are also people, which I think we are, then we also have the right, as the heirs to Jewish tradition, to take that inheritance and adapt it and reframe it and make it work for us in our home, just as any inheritance you receive has to work in your life for it to be a part of your living experience. And so we are free to be creative, to take the continuity of the past with the desire of integrity and create a new synthesis of our canon of Jewish music. We have many options to choose from in the library of Jewish song. There is, most famously, the option of a nigun. Nigun literally means a melody. It's a wordless or meaningless melody, so even if you're saying biddy biddy bum, that's just to get the melody out. The idea is that the nigun is part of a transition. You may start with lyrics, and then you go to the nigun with meaningless sounds, and then perhaps to humming, and maybe to silence at the end. But the nigun is a way of being connected to others by simply singing the same notes, with yourself as the instrument. You don't need anything else. A second option is that we can choose what I would call near-universal Jewish songs. Maybe they get a small tweak. In some humanistic Jewish communities, what we sing as Hine Matov, they have changed a slight line, where instead of the original lyrics are Shevet Achim Gam Yachad, when brothers or siblings dwell together, because Achim technically means brothers, some people change it to Shevet Amim Gam Yachad, where nations or peoples dwell together. And you can sing it to the same melody, it works very well. You could even have multiple people in the same congregation singing different lyrics at that point in the song, and it would still harmonize very well. So in the future, if you choose Amim instead of Achim, I'll never know. Now, these near-universal Jewish songs may be relatively recent. After all, these melodies don't go back to Mount Sinai or to the wandering in the desert or the Spanish Inquisition. Remember the song Hava Nagila? We think of it as a very old traditional song. It's just about 100 years old. It's really not as old as we think. And Harry Belafonte was even more recently. The other thing we should note about these universal Jewish songs is that there's a tremendous amount of Jewish diversity by different denominations and by different geographic origins. So how we sing Hevenu Shalom Aleichem may be very different from how Mizrahi, Middle Eastern Jews sing, or how North African Jews might sing it. Every year at our congregational Seder, I sing a Syrian version of the four questions, which sounds very different from the Ashkenazi melody that many people are familiar with. The reason I know it is that my father's family came from Syria, and when they sang it very differently. It sounds a bit like this. Ma nishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot shebechol halelot anu ochlin hametzu matzah halayla hazeh kulo matzah. Now for me, that resonates with family and memory because I grew up with my father singing that at our family Seder. For other people, it sounds very foreign. It doesn't even sound like a Jewish melody when they think of a Jewish melody. But that's the point of this idea of a universal Jewish song, a universal Jewish tune. There may not be very many of those, although what's nice about being part of this broad, creative, diverse family is that we can inherit from every side. And so that too can be part of your inheritance. And it is part of our Sunday school classes' inheritance because they hear it at their congregational seders every year. A third option for us in choosing our music is we can take traditional Jewish songs that need a little work. Think of the song Na'aseh Shalom. The traditional words are Oseh Shalom, he will make peace, Bimromav in his heights, Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, for us and for all Israel. Well, that could be improved. broadened. So we sing instead, Na'aseh Shalom, we will make peace. Aleinu ve'al kol ha'olam, for us and for all the world. And we do it ba'olam, in the world, not above and beyond. And so at the end, when we've created that peace, instead of saying Amen passively, we sing Shalom, the peace that we have made. Now there's also, of course, debate over this, because some people are okay with changing Na'aseh Shalom, but other texts maybe feel less authentic. There are humanistic Jewish communities that have even changed the Shema, that line from Deuteronomy that's seen as the watchword of Jewish faith. And if one is secular, do you really have a faith in that sense? Singing the old one might feel inauthentic. It might violate that sense of integrity. But instead, if you sing these words written by Sherwin Wine, I kid you not, on a napkin in a bar during a Society for Humanistic Judaism conference, when someone said, "Can there be a humanistic Shema?" And he said, "Sure." And he came up with it. Here's what it sounds like. Shema Yisrael, Echad Ameinu, Adam Echad. Now, some communities love it. They miss that melody. They feel very attached to it. They like the idea of bringing it back. And other people feel a little inauthentic. They feel like singing, "I bless America." Well, it just doesn't work. It doesn't flow. It's an aesthetic debate over whether it works or it doesn't. In our congregation, we've chosen not to do that, but some do, and that's an option too. We have the Na'aseh Shalom. Others might have a humanistic Shema. A fourth example of what we could do is we can preserve a continuity of melody, but with totally different words. It doesn't have to be a Weird Al Yankovic parody. It can be a meaningful adaptation. So at the beginning of our Shabbat tonight, we sang Shalom Aleichem, right? Wishing peace to those who pursue peace. But we also use that melody to other lyrics. We take the words Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, may you love your neighbor as yourself, and you can sing that to Shalom Aleichem. Ve'ahavta l'reacha. It works very well. So you can take that, you have a continuity of melody, even if the words you've chosen are very different. And then finally, they've written new music lately, and all the time. It could be music borrowed from American or Israeli culture, or music that our movement itself has written. That song, Peace Be With You, was originally written in this very Unitarian church by a woman named Ann Bartenfeld Barrows, and then borrowed and adapted by our Rabbi Emeritus Daniel Friedman to add a last verse in Hebrew that shares the same message. Now, even if you've gone through your list of readings, you've gone through your list of song options, you've chosen the songs that you want, you still have so many choices. As Jean-Paul Sartre, the existentialist philosopher, said, we are condemned to be free. What style of music do you want? Do you want performative music that the congregation listens to, or participatory music that the congregation sings along with? Do you want a solo, or a choir singing, or everybody sings together? Each has its own beauty and purpose. Do we introduce new songs every week that people don't know? Or do we sing the same Kol Hadash standards all the time? Or are we brave enough to tweak some of those Kol Hadash standards? My first year coming to Kol Hadash, there was a tradition of singing the Max Janowski / Barbara Streisand version of Avinu Malkeinu in the congregation, with a very slight emendation at the beginning. That was basically to say, our ancestors said, quote, and then the rest was there. And I decided for me, for my approach to liturgy, that was too much quoting, because you could say that for any of the prayers. Our ancestors said, quote, and then you've got the traditional prayer book. So I went in and I tinkered. It took a year. I warned the choir, you're going to miss it for 1 year, but I promise it will be back. And we brought back Avinu Malkeinu as Asinu Chelkeinu. We create our lot in life. And it mostly works. And then, of course, if you're designing a service, ideally you have some message to share. This service is about the importance of humanism, human responsibility, and human independence. But there can be plenty other service themes that you could choose, and the music should complement that theme, not contradict it. And then we have one last choice. Do we include readings and poetry and music by non-Jewish authors? Well, sure. But if we had a choice, maybe we might choose Jewish creators, because after all, we are not universalists. We are people who are here for a Jewish connection, and maybe even the author's name of the lyrics or the melody has something to do with that connection. Most important, and I want to end with this, music can create community. There's a reason that baseball games begin with the singing of the national anthem. And our national anthem is really hard to sing. But do you see how many people in the audience are singing? Because they're feeling part of one community. Or in the 7th and a half inning, you have "Take Me Out to the Ball Game." And in some ways, the meaning of the lyrics don't matter as much, because who eats Cracker Jack anymore? Do they even sell it in the stadium? I don't think so. They do? Okay. I'm comforted now, even though I hate it. I have found fun, though. I often go to White Sox games when they're playing the Detroit Tigers, because I came from Detroit, and I sit in the Detroit section of the stands by their dugout. But when you get to that line in the song, "Root, root, root for the..." I say Tiger, some say Cubbies, some say White Sox. So it's a unity with diversity, right? We're singing the same song, but we're all rooting for the teams that we value. But that's a way of creating community. It's the same thing at a rock concert, where you go to hear the songs you already know so you can sing them along with everybody else. And on some level in a congregation, where you come together for the familiar and the beautiful and the connective. It can even happen at a funeral. I once officiated at a funeral for a man who died too soon and a little bit suddenly. And his family asked if we could play a piece of music as part of the memorial. His favorite song of all time was Donald McLean's "American Pie." I said, "That's a long song." They said, "Pick the right part. We trust you." And so I picked a little bit of the chorus, and then the end, where it slows down, and there's piano, and it's soft and sweet. And then at the end, there's one last singing, and we were singing, "Bye, bye, Miss Am-" And everyone in the audience starts singing that song, because they're saying bye-bye to him. It was beautiful. I patted myself on the back. But more importantly, they were moved, and they were brought together, not just by hearing the words read, but by singing them together. This Shabbat, we have thought together, we have mourned together, we have reflected together, we've connected with each other, and soon we'll be noshing together again. The key element in bringing us together, a key element for sure, has been our music. You may not know it, but there are two meanings to the name Kol Hadash, depending on how you spell it in Hebrew. One meaning, the original meaning, was new voice, because after all, we were singing together our traditional songs for our community, but in a new way. But Kol Hadash, if you spell it a little bit differently, means everything is new. Any words you take and put them to music, it's like everything is new.